everyone stand up and say it with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nice job, everyone. Now get out there and explore, discover, and create. Broadcast Cow out.
CT Cowboy, the Kevin Allen Show welcomes you to today's show. So, sit back, relax, and put your thinking caps on, and remember to share, like, and subscribe.
Good morning and welcome to the Friday show. Here we are live once again, the Kevin Allen Show. You know, we come on when we want to. I don't know what's going on with the scheduling. It's all on my shoulders, no one else. Yesterday, we had some folks that we couldn't quite get scheduled for yesterday's show. And rather than going on and really kind of, you know, putting some energy into something that wouldn't be positive for you all, we decided to kind of hold off until today. And we have a great show in a lineup, as you know. Today, we're going to have on we're going to have our good friends on, some of the returning cast members. Of course, Chris Strom is going to be coming on. Of course, Brooklyn to Baghdad, the author. We got a chance to spend some time with him in Washington, D.C. Actually, I skipped the start of the hour, and that's going to be right out of the box. We're going to have Norm Pattis talking about what's going on in the J6 hearings. You know, yesterday there was a big news break during, I think it was late afternoon, that the federal government suspended the trial and closed down the trial to go over some possible evidence that was released inadvertently by the government. It's going to be very interesting. I'm sure we won't get the full details from Norm Pattis when he comes on today, but we will get the best we can from him. And just to have him on, obviously he is representing Mr. Biggs, Joe Biggs, probably one of the biggest, no pun intended, trials right now when it comes to the J6 hearings. This is going to be interesting to see where this plays out because so many people are speculating that the evidence that has been released, for example, with the Tucker Carlson video and so much more, there's been a lot of suppression. We'll talk to Norm Pattis on this show. Again, after that, Chris Strom, Brooklyn to Baghdad, talk to him. Really want to talk to Chris about the testimony from the Marine Sergeant about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. This individual got up on, and we'll talk a little bit about him. Mark, pull up his information, if you would, for me, please. And that was the testimony 2 days ago on the Capitol, at the Capitol, by this Marine who lost his leg in the withdrawal of the Afghan debacle, killing 13 servicemen and women. We'll be talking to Chris Strom on that. Also coming on today, obviously, we're going to have Raven Harrison. She comes on each week, talking with her, Raven's Radar. Saw her down at CPAC as well. Had a pleasure to see her and Paul and her kids were down there. Just a great family event for that family. And certainly Texas right now has a lot going on with the current trending news with these Americans that were, well, what's going on? You can't drive over the Mexican border anymore. You can't be in Mexico safely. I'm wondering what that's going to do. And the pompous arrogance to the president of Mexico, basically defying any interest in trying to solve these crimes with these four members of or these four Americans that were killed down there. And this is going to be interesting. So we'll get that from Raven Harrison. Elsa Kurt, the Elsa Kurt Show. She comes on quite often. I haven't seen her in a while. We need a little Elsa because we need a little bit of that cackling Vice President Kamala Harris. We'll get that from Elsa later on in the show. And Randy Ireland, another J6 connection. Randy Ireland, of course, best noted for, noted by the corporate media world as being a Proud Boy and all this other stuff, which he was. He's walked away from the Proud Boys, but hasn't walked away from defending those that are incarcerated down with the J6 hearing. So we'll be talking to Randy as well later on the show. And who else knows? I don't know who else is going to pop on. But I want to go into a video that Tucker Carlson, got to say, Tucker seems to be all over the place, and he is on fire. Let's hear about his comments about these Twitter hearings that have been taking place, and we'll talk a little bit after we see this video.
So of all the stories we covered, the Twitter files, what we've learned from Elon Musk's archive at Twitter really is one of the few that will endure. It's probably the most consequential investigative journalism in memory. And that journalism proves that the highest levels of the federal government coordinated with the social media companies to suppress dissent, to and the First Amendment, freedom of speech. Today, the House Judiciary Committee held hearings on this story. Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett used the opportunity to attack two of the journalists behind the Twitter files, Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger.
The Republicans have brought in two of Elon Musk's public scribes to release cherry-picked, out-of-context emails and screenshots designed to promote his chosen narrative, Elon Musk's chosen narrative, that is now being parroted by the Republicans because the Republicans think that these witnesses will tell a story that's going to help them out politically. This isn't just a matter of what data was given to these so-called journalists before us now. Mr. Chairman, I'm not exaggerating when I say that you have called before you two witnesses who pose a direct threat to people who oppose them.
It's almost unbelievable that a fascist like that could wind up in the U.S. Congress, arguing in Congress for censorship. It's beyond. Michael Schellenberger is one of the journalists who brought us this information. He's the founder of the Substack Public. He joins us tonight. Michael Schellenberger, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, there's so much to the story. We could spend 3 hours. We probably should. But how did you respond to statements like that in the U.S. Congress, a sitting member of Congress saying that?
Well, it was a very disturbing event, Tucker, as you pointed out. I mean, this is, they then proceeded to demand to know who our sources were, which, of course, we were unwilling to share with them. And it's important to remember the context here. We were revealing here, this is way beyond woke censorship within Twitter. Right. We've now discovered a censorship industrial complex that includes government-funded entities that are doing state-sponsored censorship, and it includes Department of Homeland, the Department of Homeland Security agencies. We have the FBI involved. They've now working with the National Science Foundation to make $40 million worth of grants to create little censorship centers in universities around the country, all done in the name of fighting disinformation, but in fact are spreading disinformation, spreading conspiracy theories, as we saw them do with the with Russiagate, the Russia hoax. We saw them spread the conspiracy theories around Hunter Biden's laptop. They are now seeking a widespread use of artificial intelligence to censor accurate information. We've now seen Facebook and Twitter caught censoring accurate information about coronavirus vaccinations because they were worried that it would lead to vaccine hesitancy. So this story has really evolved. There's much more to say on it. We're still discovering a lot of information, but what you're basically seeing here is the rise of a for-profit censorship industry funded by American taxpayers to censor real-world information. And this is basically a turning of the national security state from the kind of psychological operations they launched abroad into the United States, using the exact same kind of influence operation tactics that they used abroad on the American people. It's a huge scandal. A lot more to come on this story in the weeks and months to come.
But it's also just blatantly illegal. This is against law. This is a crime. This is against the Constitution of the United States, the Bill of Rights. How can this? Why has no one been arrested for this? I don't understand.
Well, I mean, we've all just sort of stumbled across it. At first, we couldn't figure out why it was that you had DHS and FBI and all these, and the White House interfering and making demands on the social media platforms to censor people. And then we realized that it was actually very well organized. It was coordinated. There was efforts by various think tanks to insist that reporters not properly cover the Hunter Biden laptop story, pre-bunking it in advance. It's incredibly well coordinated. It's very shocking, and you're absolutely right. The U.S. government cannot infringe upon the right of media companies to protect free speech. You cannot hire somebody to censor. So this subcontracting, the contracting with of taxpayer money of organizations to engage in censorship is absolutely illegal. We've been promised, there was many people we met with today in Congress who have promised to get to the bottom of it. We've got to defund and dismantle the censorship industrial complex before it really undermines our whole democratic system.
Yeah, it's a crime. It's that simple. And we so appreciate your journalism. As always, Michael Schellenberger.
Thanks, Tucker.
Thank you. So, of all the stories we covered, the Twitter files.
And there you go. Tucker Carlson breaking it down again. It's pretty amazing that Tucker Carlson seems to be the one media personality that is willing to actually go forward and deep dive into some of these very, very we're really alarming situations. We're witnessing congressional elected officials sit in congressional hearings and advocate to break the law when it comes to First Amendment rights. It's interesting what's going on in America today, and we're going to cover that a little bit more because we have on the phone right now our special guest, and we don't want to detain him because he's probably going to get detained himself someday, and we don't want that to happen. Norm, if you go to prison, I want to be the first person on your visiting list, please.
All right, that works. Thanks. I hope I don't go to prison.
Well, I hope
you.
you.
We're in prison this morning. Besides, get out of bed and say hello.
Well, good morning. Good morning. And Norm Pattis, of course, famed attorney from Connecticut, now representing the J6. More notable in Mr. Biggs, the trial that's taking place, a long trial down in D.C., had a halt yesterday because of something with the federal government and some releasing of documents. Norm, what took place?
So we were in the 46th day of proceedings. We began January 2nd. We're hoping to finish by the end of March. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. An FBI agent was on the stand, and during cross-examination by one of my colleagues, she was asked whether she had gone through her text messages and provided them to the government as she was required to. And in those text messages, did she notice any messages involving some monitoring of communications between lawyers and their clients? Did she notice certain other classes of communications? And when she said no, she was then shown the spreadsheet she provided, and lo and behold, there was a secret row, as it were, that wasn't on the spreadsheet. If you clicked a certain column, it appeared, and there were thousands more messages. And they suggested that there was information that she had not. This raised questions about whether she had been credible or not.
Now, this is an FBI agent who was a part of the investigation, Norm?
Yes. And so the proceedings were stopped. The jury was sent home, and, the government was directed to get to the bottom of this. The next morning, this was on Wednesday, Thursday, we came into court, and the government announced that there had been a, quote, spill, end quote, of classified information to the defense team, and we needed to assess what to do about that, and the government was going to want information clawed back, returned to them. I dug in and said, I'm not giving anything back without a court order. The government's witness is on the stand. I have a Sixth Amendment right to confront that witness and to use any tool that I have lawfully obtained to impeach that person's credibility. And if the government erred by giving us information we shouldn't have, that's the government's error, and we're entitled to reap the benefits of it. So it was a fairly dramatic moment in court. And, the judge did not order us to return the material, but he ordered us not to read it or look at it anymore. The government is continuing to assess what it is we've been given and whether it pertains to this case at all, and hearings will resume on Monday. Of particular interest to me, the government said that there was a text message that indicated 338 pieces of evidence had been destroyed, and that this was classified, and we shouldn't have that. Now, I have no way of knowing, and neither should any of you reach conclusions, that that information necessarily involved this case. For all I know, it's something entirely different. So what's been, so the proceedings are going on as proceedings do in court at a snail's pace, one question at a time, with deliberate weighing and evaluation of evidence as it comes in. The media has reached conclusions, depending on your political stripes, that this is either evidence of government destruction of evidence in this case, and it's all a government setup. The evidence doesn't support that. Neither does it necessarily support that this was an innocent mistake. The fact of the matter is the judge has yet to see the evidence. We've yet to see the evidence, and we're in the middle of evaluating it. But suffice it to say, in this trial, after 46 days of proceedings, to have this blow up at this late stage, it raises questions that need answers. And I'm not even sure I, involved in the case, know what the questions are at this point. I know the answers aren't to start throwing Molotov cocktails and to politicize the January 6th trials. We are a deeply divided country. We need to find a way to unite around common norms, around a joint understanding of what the truth is. And at this point in this case, the truth will be determined in the courtroom, not by pundits. And I caution people to be cautious, let the evidence unfold, and if it points in one direction or another, then run in the direction that the evidence points in, but don't start screaming at your television that disproves your assumptions. You know what happens when you and I make assumptions? It makes an ass out of you and me. So everybody take a deep breath. Let's let the evidence unfold. there is something dramatic going on in the case. I just don't know what story it tells yet.
Do you ever choose anything easy, Norm? Do you always have to go for the big gusto here?
One of my friends said, "You know what? Your cases are all always very complicated. What do they all have in common?" I said, "I don't know." He looked at me and said, "You." So I think life is complicated, and if if you think of all the gazillion data points approaching you on a given moment, at any given moment in time, on any given day, you have choices to make on how to interpret the data. The discipline of trial is that it imposes rules of evidence and rules of procedure on data, and that it invites fact finders to make reasonable conclusions. I am telling you and your viewers that you cannot leap to conclusions about FBI corruption, this, that, and the other thing based on the data that we have right now. It may be, it may not. Let's just see where the evidence takes us.
Very good. You're a seasoned veteran of the litigation world, and so you've had many trials. We all know about many of them, but this one here, this is history. And you and I had a chance to be down at CPAC and get some FaceTime. Of course, Jonathan Goldstein with us. How does that impact somebody knowing? I mean, I know you're focused on the game. I know you're a professional, but this is a historic landmark case, is it not?
You know, historians write history, trial lawyers try cases. The rest of us go about our business trying to pay our bills and take care of our families. Let's see what becomes of this case. My concern is the whole J6 narrative is going to be weaponized for the 2024 elections, and I think we should leave these cases to the courtrooms. I fear, however, that as divided as we are, people will pick up any rock that fits to throw. And I was very upset with Tucker Carlson this week. I thought his coverage of the Q shaman was bordered on irresponsible. I mean, you know, there was violence at the January 6th event. It was a riot. Most of the people who were there peacefully. Some of them were not. The government has alleged that the violence was planned. Those who are accused of it deny it. A jury will decide whether that's true. But for Tucker to take an isolated moment out of that day when law enforcement was overwhelmed and was involved in damage control and just trying to get people in and out of the building without anyone being hurt, and for him to then say, "See, this proves it's all a cover up and a lie," that's just irresponsible. I support Tucker. I like Tucker. I have him on my speed dial. But he was wrong on this one, and I think he needs to cool his jets, and we all need to take a deep breath.
So from a litigation point of view, from your expert status, that's how you feel. And so from my point of view, I feel like that's a little more evidence that we, the American people, are starving for. And so there's a little bit of that, you know, I really appreciate what Tucker did. So I get it. I get it.
I hear you loud and clear, and I don't know what the medium is. I mean, look, the fact is not everybody gets a chance to spend 2-3 months of their case in a courtroom,
right,
you know, arguing over what a couple hours mean. Most of us have to make quicker decisions. I'm not supporting for a moment the notion that there should be censorship. I just think that those who are in positions of leadership in forming public opinion need to really do a gut check on this and not play to their biases. And, you know, if you find something that confirms your bias, then make the extra effort to ask yourself whether you're living in a bubble and whether your bubble needs to be burst. My fear is that we're falling into silos on J6. It's going to become much like birtherism with Obama, Russian interference with the Democrats and Trump, stop the steal after the election, and election denialism now. We don't need narratives that divide. We need narratives that unite.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, you're talking about you're in the midst of a trial defending Joe Biggs. Obviously, you are there to battle and protect him. And there's so much outside interest that is looking to expose the entire situation that some of that could be damning to your case, right? I mean, that obviously could hurt in your case that you're defending.
Jurors are told to ignore the media. I don't know how they do. But a properly instructed jury is presumed to follow the law. So presumably they're not paying attention to the circus on their televisions and on the airwaves. I hope that's right. I hope they will make a decision based on the evidence that we see in court. When we give our closing arguments, we will ask them to return not guilty because we beat the verdicts, because we think that's what the evidence will support. I worry about what outside influences will do to jurors who are evaluating the evidence. These 12 jurors have a front row seat on history and this will be the longest J6 trial that we've had, perhaps the longest one that will ever occur. By the time it's done, there'll be 3 months of evidence. We need to listen to these 12 people and see what they have to say.
And so, calmer, cooler heads prevail. Norm Pattis being one of them down in DC. Now, this is a great insider, sort of trading here, what's going on in your life. But let's face it, you're not you're living the rock star life. You're probably in a very fancy hotel. You don't. I mean, you're not like back in the day when you were traveling around roaches.
Airbnb. I've got a cold. I'm sitting drinking NyQuil and sipping soup at night. I don't know many rock stars who are doing that. I'm working hard. So I'm a working man.
Mm-hmm. You're a working man. You are a working man. And what's next? And this trial obviously is the focus. But what is next for you? You've reached the point in your life. Me and you have talked even publicly, privately, that you're kind of getting towards the end of the career. What's next for Norm? Books? Write more books? Do maybe movies? Start a show with Tom Cruise?
What's next for me? I've got fields to clear in Connecticut. We own some property up in Vermont. I've got trails to clear and tractors to maintain. I'd like to write some, and the phones are ringing. I've been retained in a few more J6 cases when I've been down here. Trouble seems to follow me, and so there's somebody talking to me about a case in Vegas. I'll probably stay at the law for a while. I'm sure I will. And my firm is active and still has a number of lawyers in it. We are representing people in cases ranging from DWIs to murder, and so the firm that I've built will continue to go, and I'll continue to be active in it. I don't know what comes next. I got to get through this trial. I went from the Alex Jones thing to this. It's been a long year, and I'm looking forward to taking a couple of weeks off and catching up on some sleep.
Very good. I think Jonathan and I are going to be coming down soon, so we'll make sure we set that schedule up with you. Again, Norm Pattis, famed attorney from Connecticut and beyond, right here on the Kevin Allen Show. Thank you very much, Norm. We'll talk to you soon.
Be well, Kevin.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
So there you go, getting the update from our good friend Norm Pattis, who is, as I said, representing, and I truly stand by it, a very historic case. One that is going to have amazing impact on, I think, everything from how we view our, social interaction with our government, how we view the way that government reacts to uprisings or situations like that took place. We found that a lot of folks across this country found the J6 attacks on the Capitol. And folks, I've been very clear with this. Anyone that broke a window, anyone, to Norm's very good point, anyone that committed a crime, as it, be a misdemeanor crime or not, they should be held accountable. And we should not allow that. The same way I felt about those who were burning down courthouses or police vehicles during the riots that took place after George Floyd's killing. But yet we have a narrative in this country that seems one-sided. We have a narrative in this country that will only release certain information, certain perspectives, and it always comes down to a political one. Norm says, we got to be cooler heads. We got to let the evidence be exposed, and I agree with him. We should. But I also think that Tucker Carlson, I do believe that information is important. Why? Because we didn't see, the average everyday American didn't see the calmness to that day. I heard it from personal friends, people who were there, said it was one of the most beautiful moments in the history of their country they went to, where people gathered in Washington, D.C., and they listened to speakers, and they didn't go to the Capitol. Those people, well, they went home. But those same people have been labeled by a narrative created by, persuasive media that they also are criminals. Therefore, painting a picture that everyone involved was a part of the J6 riots. Not true. Not true at all. Video proves it, according to Tucker. Good interview with Norm Pattis coming up right after this. Staying on the J6, Randy Ireland. He is for justice, a4justice for the J6ers are incarcerated. We'll talk to Randy. He is down there every day. He's fighting on the battlefield, trying to bring some justice for these folks that are incarcerated. Back in a moment on the Kevin Allen Show. And welcome back right here, live, the Kevin Allen Show, Friday. It is a mild temperature out here in Connecticut here this March, what is it, 9th, I believe. And as we talk to Norm Pattis about the J6, it really transitions right over to our next guest. We introduced him as Randy Ireland. We met Randy on the road when we were down at traveling with Veterans for America's First, down there with Mike Crispy and also with Ian Smith when we were traveling around with them. Randy, how you been?
Been doing all right. How about you, brother?
Been very well. I want to first apologize. We saw each other. We didn't get a chance to really talk down at CPAC. I know you were busy. We were busy as well. Great event down there. Talk a little bit about what's going on with currently the J6 incarcerated inmates.
Yeah, I mean, well, at this point in time, we have well over 1,000 J6 defendants in total. Out of the 1,000, we have roughly 125 that are currently incarcerated. Some, many of them are going through the process. But right now we have about 125 currently incarcerated. 68 of those are still indefinitely detained pre-trial, many of them approaching 780 days incarcerated. So, it's a long, drawn-out process. But the one thing I'll say is, I've had the privilege and the honor back at the beginning of August of holding a vigil outside the D.C. jail, in partnership with Mickey Whithoff, Ashley Babbitt's mom. And, the biggest reason why we started doing a lot of that was to educate America that this was going on, to, stand in solidarity with our political prisoners, and ultimately to seek justice, justice for Ashley Babbitt, as well as justice for the J6 political prisoners. And I mean, one of the things, especially CPAC. CPAC was a huge event. I think J6 really stole the stage there at CPAC. Very busy, but a lot of attention got drawn to the vigil there at the DC jail. And that's really what this is about. And in the aftermath of that, like you had talked about with Norm before, Tucker Carlson, some of the stuff that he's released, it's really drawn a lot of national attention to this. And it's something that, I personally have been working for, 2 years on, and many of us out here have. So it's good that finally, information and truth is getting out there to the extent that people are asking questions. Having sat in on a lot of the Proud Boy trial that's currently going on. Even that trial, there's so much that's coming out. And, the sad reality is we need more people to be watching and paying attention to what's going on, especially in that trial, because really, and I've said this to many people, I don't think the Proud Boys trial is really about the Proud Boys or so much the defendants that are there. It's more about a class of ideologies, what we have for our country. At the end of the day, are we a nation that's about freedom, about liberty, about justice for all? And what you're seeing unfold in many of these courtrooms, it's abominable. It really is. The games that the DOJ and the FBI play within those courtrooms, selectively withholding, exculpatory evidence. And I think that's the thing. It's what we're about is justice. And it's exactly like what you said, were crimes committed that day? Absolutely. And I think most of the people involved would admit to that. But so much of this has been politicized in such a way that, when you have one side of the political spectrum where, charges are summarily dismissed, there's no indefinite detainment, bail is readily given. And on the other side of the political spectrum, you actually have the mobilization of the FBI and the DOJ kicking in doors in the middle of the night, hauling people away, keeping them indefinitely detained, 780 days. Let that sink in. Many of these that are indefinitely detained, over half of them are veterans, American heroes, and they're being treated like this. And
do you, Randy, ever fear for yourself being outspoken as you are? Of course, you are noted as a former Proud Boy member in New York City. That's out there. I mean, the media doesn't let that, you can't wash that off, but you also are very, very vocal. I've been with you on stage as well down in DC. Do you worry about the FBI kicking your door in?
No, I mean, I guess in a sense, I mean, it's always in the back of your mind. But I mean, to me, first and foremost, I'm a military veteran. I'm a veteran of the Air Force. I took an oath to the Constitution. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really got involved in this fight. Not only are many of my friends wrapped up in it, I was not there on January 6th. I think if I was, I'd probably be sitting right beside them, in this particular trial. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, no, I mean, it's, we all have a choice and we all have a role to play in all of this. And I mean, regardless of they want to come after me, let them come after me. I mean, I haven't broken the law. I'm going to stand up. I'm going to speak the truth, regardless of who likes it, who doesn't like it. And, that I think that's the thing that, I don't know. I mean, I've said that to many of the lawyers in a lot of these cases. Many of these lawyers, especially from the very beginning, advise their clients to be quiet, get off social media, don't have any interaction with anybody else, no interaction with other J6ers and stuff like that. And I think that's personally speaking, I think if everybody stood up, spoke their truth, this would have been over a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And the sad reality is, and I think with a lot of the video that Tucker has shown, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much video that the American people are deserving to see. Let the American people make the decisions. Let the politicians and the people that want to politicize it, let them get to the sideline, take a seat. Because I think if the American people actually saw a lot of what went on there, and I've often said this, January 6th was a day of complexities. And depending on where you were and when you were there, you may have seen vastly different things, Mm-hmm. A lot of people have told me, in my work and all of this, much like what you had said, that was one of the most beautiful days of their lives. Mm-hmm. Seeing the patriotism, seeing the people come together. And so much of that has been, thrown under the bus and broad stroked for political purposes. And that's the one thing that I think we're all out here to dispel,
It's amazing. So Tucker Carlson goes and throws the video up of some footage. I don't know factually, but I think the indications were that somehow Kevin McCarthy helped release some video. You don't know if you just heard Norm Pattis, who's representing Joe Biggs. He kind of took exception with that video, and I can understand he's in the midst of a battle, doesn't want any distractions to his case. But I personally, and I said it to Norm, I appreciate other perspectives being released to the American people. I'm hoping I can convince people to open their eyes and say, well, maybe everything isn't exactly what the state or the government has presented. Is that how you feel?
Oh, absolutely. I think I probably said in many of these courts and trials and seen a lot of stuff, seen a lot of testimony on the stand that most people have not had the opportunity to. And that's the thing. It's like, when you see, one thing that's clear to me is every single one of these J6 defendants that are either going to trial, whether it's a bench trial or a jury trial or whatever, you're not getting a fair trial. You're not. You're just not. And if there's ever a reason for having a change of venue, J6 in and of itself is the exact reason why. There's such a clear bias in the courtrooms. And again, it's not just the DOJ and the FBI, but it's a lot of what these judges say and what they allow to go on in their courtrooms. It comes from a place of bias. It really does. I would say 30-1 when there's an objection, by the defense, it gets shot down. Overruled. When there's an objection by the DOJ or the FBI, it's almost always sustained. Mm-hmm. And it's just, you see that happen. And more importantly, there's a lot of fundamental assumptions that each one of these judges and every single one of these courtrooms, when they sentence people, It's almost like, you're a terrorist. I mean, these are the things that are almost taken for granted as if it's been proven to be true. You're a terrorist. The election was never stolen.
Mhm.
You know, law enforcement did everything right that day. Our elected officials did everything right that day. These are things that fundamentally are accepted as true. And the very videos that, if they were released to the American people, would show a starkly different picture,
Randy, what's your hopes out of the new leadership in Kevin McCarthy? And as we wrap up this great interview, Randy Ireland, of course, talking about the J6 defendants and a lot of the court cases. What's your hope with the new sitting Congress and what they are able to expose to the American people?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I'm not sure that so much is going to happen legislatively. But the one thing I can say is, just in a little bit of work that they've done, and the Republicans in taking the House has been absolutely key to this. They're in the process of setting up committees, subcommittees, holding hearings about a lot of this stuff. The weaponization of our federal government, the FBI whistleblowers. There is so much truth that's about to come out, and that's to be unleashed. And whether that has legislative, overall, I'm just not sure, the political scene. But the one thing I mean, every day you're seeing new and new information released. I saw a message yesterday with Clay Higgins and a few others. I think it was Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I forget the other one. But they sent a letter to Mario Bowser wanting absolute transparency, what happened regarding January the 6th. I think there's a lot more truth that's going to be exposed to the American people. And it's going to begin to expose the lies and hypocrisy, and more importantly, expose the politicization that all of this has. We have over 1,000 families at this point in time whose lives have been absolutely destroyed, upended. So many American heroes, not only indefinitely detained, charged, their benefits for serving our country as heroes taken away from them.
Right. It's Randy, the behind the scenes is the scenes that we need to expose. And I think you and I need to talk offline about how we're able to do that and expose some of the family stories, because those are the people that are really living. Some people have lost their houses, they've lost their entire livelihoods, and it's getting worse. And in some ways, the government's purposely trying to do this. We know that. Randy Ireland, you will come back on again down the road. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon. Randy Ireland is down there in D.C. fighting for those that can't be heard in the J6. Back in a moment, we're going to have our next guest, Chris Strom. Of course, I refer to Chris as one of our fan faves here. He is, of course, the author of Brooklyn to Baghdad. And we'll get Chris right on now after these couple little videos we play right here in a moment. On us. All right, listen, hey, we're back, the Kevin Allen Show. We have our next guest on, Chris Strom, Brooklyn to Baghdad, our good friend. He was also down in D.C. We got to spend some time with him, but I'm just going to go right into it. Mark, you are fired and terminated from the show, at least for the next 2 hours, because Chris can't get on the video like he's supposed to be, so we're going to have to go to the phone. Chris, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm sorry about the confusion. We actually, Chris, here's the deal. Mark has been working so hard putting together a new Restream platform. It's our own. We can use it. We don't have to, all these other behind the scenes stories, and we will fix this problem. So we see that handsome face of yours because you are a good looking guy. Of course, the former New York City detective went on to serve in the military. And the reason I really wanted to talk to you today, other than it's a typical, conversation we have about everything, was the hearings that took place recently, just this week. The Marine, I believe it was a sergeant, testifying about the situation that took place over in the evacuation of Afghanistan. Any thoughts on what you take away from that testimony, as well as just looking back to 13 dead service members? What's your thoughts?
Well, it's again, we were on the air a while ago with Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller, and it's a complete failure of leadership. I mean, we have a young Marine, and his name is Tyler Vargas Andrews, and he's a trained sniper. And just for your audience's benefit, you don't graduate boot camp to become a sniper. I mean, the washout rate and the school is very intense for that school. So here you have somebody in a war zone, and he's calling back for the okay on basically to take this Taliban suicide vest bomber out. And you have people that are hemming and hawing, and they refuse to make a decision. And he's on record, thank God, that he's alive to tell the story, or else it probably would have never been told, that he's calling back the leadership chain, saying, I have visual contact on the subject. Do I have permission to engage? And they're saying, do not engage. And then he calls back again. And the lieutenant colonel, and he names him, he calls him right out. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Brad Whitted. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right. Says, gee, I don't know. I mean, this is a lieutenant colonel who I'm sure that this Marine sniper has a relationship with in terms of being in his chain of command. He's not an unknown face or an unknown entity. Right. And they're under complete strict rules of engagement. And here he is, he could have potentially saved these people's lives, and he's denied permission to shoot this guy.
It's insane. And the truth, when all the criticism came out about how this evacuation took place, of course, we saw corporate media and we saw the political elite started to push back. And this is conspiracy. This was the best situation. Now we know that 13 servicemen and women, which we knew then. And of course, you talked about Lieutenant Colonel Schiller, who actually I was able to connect with this morning briefly. We're going to get him back on, Chris, and maybe you as well, that same show. But the reality is now the truth's coming out. What do we do, though? What do we do about it going forward?
Well, I'm hoping that, there's going to be some accountability. I mean, this is insane. I mean, I wrote about this in Law Enforcement Today, and Kyle Reyes, who I know you're very good friends with, he was nice enough to publish the article. But the same questions that were being asked then are now, some of them are starting to be answered, and the names are coming out. And I want somebody, listen, let me just explain to you. I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps for your audience's benefit, and I spent 15 months in Iraq. So I know a little bit about rules of engagement, when you can shoot, when you can't shoot. This is clearly a situation where the Marine, Tyler, is calling for permission, and he's being denied that. So you can't lay any fault with him. And by the way, he lost his right arm and had over 150 ball bearings embedded in his body. It's a miracle that he's alive to tell this story.
What a brave testimony. What a brave. I saw just some bits and pieces of it. Obviously, I didn't get a chance to cover it. You know the details better. That's why you're an expert witness, by the way, on Newsmax and more. You can see Chris. He's an expert witness. I'm not. But I can tell you that the testimony, the few minutes that I saw, was tear-jerking when he broke down. Someone that knows military men and women, someone that lost friends, how emotional is it to see someone that can share those experiences that you were well aware of?
It's gripping. Listen, when you lose somebody in combat, again, these are young, beautiful people. They are there because they volunteered, and they each have an individual story to tell. And it's one thing to sit there at a cocktail party and say, gee, isn't that a shame about what happened in Afghanistan? And then look at your phone app to see if you can make a tea time at your local country club the next day. These people have no idea. They claim to be sympathetic and empathetic to these people, but they really are so detached from reality. Mm-hmm. It's like they're like Georgetown trust fund babies that are trying to identify with these people, and you can't. There's no relationship between these people at all, and that's why there's no urgency to hold anybody accountable, because these people, unfortunately, the military is now more concerned with diversity, equity, and inclusion, critical race theory, getting vaccinations, and all kinds of other crap, instead of just being there what they're assigned to do and allowed to do their assigned duties. But they're so micromanaged by people that are so afraid to make a decision, it costs people's lives. And I want this guy brought up in front of the Senate or in front of Congress, and I want him to explain himself, because that back at JSOC, where all this was taking place, there's audio and video recordings of this thing from start to finish.
There should be. If they haven't wiped the evidence clear, this is somewhat of the thought is that, just as Norm Pattis was talking about the J6 and the exposing of the FBI's, now it closes down the Mr. Biggs trial, because they have to figure out how this evidence was not discovered, or it got discovered by the defendants. It's crazy, and I think it's all big. Just a lot of people, a lot of big boys and girls involved, but not really qualified to be involved in running the day-to-day operation. How fearful are you of those enemies of ours seeing these types of weakening of our military, and what it says to them if they ever actually want to attack America?
Well, we're done. This administration has successfully, totally demoralized the military. You have people like General Milley, testifying before Congress. I want to know what it's like to be white. I mean, all kinds of nonsense like this. So there's really no leadership in the military anymore. The Secretary of the Army and on, and Secretary of State, they're all a bunch of Obama holdovers, and some are actually, unfortunately, Trump holdovers that are just mixing their political views with a military, where the military is basically designed to break things and kill people. That's what it should be doing. Instead, they get involved in the State Department nation building, which is a whole other issue. I mean, I don't know if again, in the video, the State Department, who was in charge of, and has always been in charge of issuing the visas, decided at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon the day before, yeah, we're going to close up shop. We don't have a second shift coming in. Like the Marines have a 24-hour shift. Basically, you're not leaving your post until you're properly relieved. And these people at the State Department says, yeah, we're going to go home. Screw the people that want to get out of here, that are going to be basically murdered and tortured if they don't get on that plane. And some of them were so impassioned and so afraid that they literally impaled themselves on the barbed wire rather than be caught and captured by the Taliban and be tortured and killed. That's how serious of an issue is. But we have people in the State Department, they got to get their night sleep. They got to go home and get a shower and things like that. They can't be bothered with staying there 24/7 to help these poor people.
Why don't you, so the people understand why Chris is an expert witness and understanding exactly the things that going on, is that you served in Baghdad. You were Brooklyn to Baghdad, the author of the book, a writer who really creatively put a story together of a lot of details of what you're touching on now. It's been going on forever, right? This kind of corruption in government has been around for a while.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, these are people that they live a very charmed life. When they work for the State Department, that's a political animal. I mean, if you thought that politics infiltrated the FBI, which it has, it's rampant in the State Department, and everybody is not going to go the extra mile, because after all, these are Afghanistan people, and they didn't even go the extra mile for the actual American citizens and the people that were the interpreters that aided the Americans while they were there. So they're really a disgrace. But when you look at people like Tony Blinken, who's running the foreign policy, basically, I don't know if he's actually running it or somebody else in the administration. It's really a disaster. It's a complete disaster. And here we are. We're more concerned with sending billions of dollars to Ukraine than we are about our own people on the ground that are calling out for help and need some leadership where they could actually make a difference and maybe change the dynamic of a disastrous withdrawal.
Now, you also, obviously an important part of your story is serving in the New York City Police Department as a detective. You, broke your The cherry there, I guess, is what they would say back in the day, or whatever they would say. That might be very tasteless if I just said it the wrong way. You know what I mean? You got your investigative skills going, and you actually shared a story with me about 9/11 and some of the things that were taking place during that time when I got together with all you folks down there. This terrorist attack on America, New York City faced it. We see it across the world. Do you ever sit back and go, I see the next one coming? I see, because we're so weak right now. You experience it as a cop. What would you tell the American people? To be vigilant and be aware? Because I have a feeling, Chris, when do you attack your enemy? You attack your enemy when they're on a knee, and America's on a knee right now.
Yeah, listen, they're talking about an alliance between Russia and Iran and China. China has openly said that they're going to take back Taiwan. I mean, this is an administration that has no spine. They've smelled fear or blood in the water, as they say, and they're going to take advantage of it and fully exploit it, and they're doing it. Now they're talking about also the Nord Stream pipeline, which apparently we were involved in. And again, I don't know for a fact if it's true, and it has not yet been confirmed. But this is what's going on in the world in real time, and we're having people being killed in Ukraine. We're having Russia just bully us around, and we have a president that's compromised not only by the Chinese government, because it's been proven he took all kinds of money, or his son did, and so did the Biden think tank in Washington D.C. But we also have the compromisation of Ukraine. Well, if you don't fire the prosecutor, you're not getting the $1 billion. So there's a definite problem with this administration in terms of being able to carry a big stick and follow through with it. We don't have that anymore. We just don't have that.
We certainly don't. But what we do is that we have the fight in all of us, and hopefully you can continue to educate us on what's going on behind the scenes. Because listen, the American people, I served in the State House in Connecticut. I didn't serve in Washington D.C., but I saw what took place with some of the deceitful tactics of this government here in Connecticut. I can't imagine, or I guess I can imagine, what's going on in D.C. When you see the Tucker Carlson release of the video of the J6, of course, the most famous face of the J6, the Charmin, and you see what he was able to do when exposing, and I believe it was Kevin McCarthy who somehow was associated with releasing these videos. What's your feelings when you see that perspective versus what the American people have been fed with personally picked video clips and news that really swayed the people to commit these people to a guilty charge right out of the box? You feel like this might help justify and get some people innocent?
Yeah, well, listen, there's two things that are going on here. One is I'm glad Tucker Carlson released the videotape, because it does show, even if it's selective in nature, that this person who was a Navy vet didn't break anything. If he's guilty of anything, he's guilty of trespassing or whatever the actual legal code is. But he certainly is not a violent person. He's getting a guided tour. I don't know what cop in the world would say, yeah, come on into One Police Plaza or the mayor's residence and just walk around. Feel free to pick up anything you like and put your feet up on a desk and things like that. But what I think what Tucker Carlson is really trying to illustrate is that there is a selective form of prosecution. In other words, you're trying to blanket everybody and bully everybody with saying, take the plea or you're going to do 15 years or 10 years or whatever it is that they're talking about. And in some cases, these people are in solitary confinement, which I don't know if you've ever been. Well, I know you have, because you worked in a correctional facility. A solitary confinement, there's actually laws, and it varies from state to state. You can't keep people in there indefinitely, whether they're behavioral issues or not. They just can't be in there because it's known to be psychologically damaging.
I find it ironic that the same congressmen and women senators that are so strong in trying to destroy these individuals are the same people that fight on Capitol Hill during committee meetings trying to eliminate that kind of tactic being used in the jail systems across our country. That is the hypocrites that are running country today.
That's right. And there's no judicial process. That's really what it's coming down to. In other words, it's in the Constitution, the right to a speedy trial. And these people, where in the world, again, look around the world, look what's going on in Atlanta, look what's going on in New York City and other cities where people are out there committing serious violent felonies and they're out the next day. Here you have people, and again, I'm not talking about the ones that were breaking windows and trashing offices. I'm not talking about those people. But you can't impose a sentence on somebody without giving them a trial, and that's essentially what they did. They're basically holding them for indefinitely, and that's against the Constitution. You have the right to a speedy trial, and they're not getting their due process. And they should be, at least at bare minimum, be able to bail out or bond out. I mean, but they're not even being offered that. It's not even in the offering.
It's a pretty crazy time, and it's most of the people that really stand against the government. It's ironic, right? The people that are fighting the hardest for our government are those that are really being victimized with this persuasive, administration, the way they're pushing the agenda, the corporate media world. We covered a lot today, Chris, and unfortunately, we didn't get the video. We would have liked to seen that. I know you got dressed for us too, right? You were all dressed up in a suit and tie.
Yeah, except for my shorts. I'm going to the gym after this.
Oh, you're going to the gym. Okay. All right, Chris Strom, we're going to get you back on. I'm going to have you and Mark connect so we can get the video issue. I do apologize. That was my fault, not Mark's. Certainly, I should have thought ahead of time to get you all cued in. Chris Strom, go and check him out. Brooklyn to Baghdad. That book is still selling off the shelves, right?
Yes, sir, it is. Yes, sir.
Where can people find it again?
Amazon, Walmart, any local bookstore. If it's not there, you can ask them to get it for you. And then Barnes and Noble, certainly. So I appreciate everybody's support, and especially your support, Kevin. It was great seeing you last week.
You as well. We'll talk soon. Thank you very much. Christopher Strom, our friend from New York City Police Department and more, Brooklyn to Baghdad. Of course, he has a different perspective than most can understand because he served in Baghdad. He saw behind the scenes. He was right there embedded with the military, working side by side with them. And he saw some of the corruption, and, to have his perspective, especially now after these hearings with this Marine sniper, of course, sharing the true story about the command at the time saying, no, stand down. No, you cannot take out the enemy. This was a really strategic move that could have saved many people's lives. 13 dead, men and women, servicemen and women. Bad decisions. Back in a moment with the Kevin Allen Show.
Thank you for watching today's show. Now go out and do good things. Please subscribe for the latest updates and remember to like, share, and comment often.